I think we're live, you know. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Let me know when you can hear me. I'm going to click that. Let's go for that button. And then also press this button here. Oh, golly, there we are. Yeah, croeso I derailment, bore da pawb. How's everyone doing? You all there? You should have... This is going to be a fun episode. I'm looking forward to this one. We have many exciting things to talk about. This one, I wasn't sure how it would turn out, and I wasn't sure how much work would be involved in prepping it, but actually, the answer to those questions is not much to make it quite interesting. So, yeah, it should be a good one. Hello, everyone. I'm not going to faff. What we're going to do is crack on. I'll give you a brief big face. Hello, everyone. Look, you can see I'm a bit more naturally lit. It's that time of year. We're already reaching the point in the evening. Actually, you might hear a nice bird song out the window because I've got the window open because it's warm in here. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. It's illuminated. Let's see how long it lasts. Well, let's see how long this episode is, and if it's pitch black by the end of it. Anyway, right. Let us press on with the news. Yes, let's do that. And first of all, let's just bring. I don't want to start us off too sober, but obviously there was a substantial, significant death, last week or since the last rail natter. So I thought we should just spend a moment, kind of in memoriam of the Boring Company's loop and any pretenses that it was or is a form of mass transit. So yeah, let's just I think we should all just have a quiet moment of reflection, please. But not too long a moment. Anyway, right. Yeah, it's rubbish. Because it actually launched. It had its press launch. Here it is. Oh god, it's bad. It's bad, folks. It's so bad. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's just cars in a hole. There they are going around in circles. I've switched the colours off to make sure that this is this is flashing colours, but I switched it off because it's more obvious how crap it all is if you switch the silly RGB off. There it is, just cars going around in a circle. It's really bad. Yes. So anyway, right. Actually, it's even funny. This video. Okay, sorry about the rationing of pixels. This video is not slowed down. This is at normal speed, at real time speed. Like it's going at running. It's like it was going at jogging pace. Like it's going at jogging pace. What is this? Oh my goodness. Anyway, just hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. What else is in the news? So anyway, that was all kicking off on the Twitter, so that was all good fun. As you know, most of my news ends up coming from there. Oh, yeah, Le Grand Cell Phone. The Green Party. Hello, the Green Party of England and Wales. I'm waving. Hello. Yeah, they did an absolutely remarkable cell phone. When was it? Yesterday? What is the date today? It's the what is it? It's the 40th. Yeah, this was yesterday. Yeah, just a remarkable cell phone. So yeah, they tweeted in support of France's short-haul domestic flight ban, which is, to be honest, not as good news as it sounds, because there are a lot of get-out-of-jail-free clauses in that ban. But it's a kind of a general thrust in the right direction, right? Anyway, so yeah, that report, the report that sorry, yeah, people are in the chat. Yeah, there was a report that came out with the with Boring Company's loop. And it's the worst piece of transport reporting I've ever seen. It was in the thread that I ranted about. It's really bad. And there was a really good critique of that news article. Was particularly pathetic and fawning. Anyway, sorry. Back to this article, which is Le Grand Cell Phone. Yeah, so as you see, so this is the Green Party tweeted out, heavy investment in national rail networks is what made this possible. They tweeted this out unironically. This is the climate leadership we need to see, they said in the same tweet. Just absolutely remarkable. So yeah, so that got some likes, but it got serious numbers of replies and quote tweets. They got ratioed big time. And then what's even funnier is, if I do say so myself, I just kind of did one of my standard lowercase tweets underneath, saying yes, why do you oppose it then? Which got substantially more likes, a third more likes, or 50% more likes, sorry, than than the actual original tweet. So I don't know. That's usually indicative of a really... it's not gone well for them. It's a bit of a bloodbath in there for their comms. Anyway, never mind. But more interesting than that silly tweet and my reply to it is Martin Lewis off of various Facebook scams he did an interesting little poll which got about 75,000. Well, it got pretty much exactly 75,000 responses, which is a decent number. And he was asking about whether people would support the same sort of thing happening in the UK. And it was he did what he normally did. He split it by demographics, so he put under and over 40 and support against. And the results are really interesting. So if you kind of smoosh those together, you can see that there's a pretty strong support across both ages, even more in the older demographic, weirdly. 79% of people, 79% of those 75,000 people are saying ban trainable domestic flights. So not all domestic flights, but just domestic flights that can sensibly be done by train. That's quite interesting. So this, so I found that this is, I think this is really good. And if you pair this with the research that was being done quite recently about how long people were comfortable travelling by rail compared to flights, or generally how long people would be comfortable travelling by train, that 2.5 hours that France has done is pretty conservative. In fact, in the chat, I think people are saying, David Shepard, I heard the French argued the railway time down from 4 hours to 2.5 hours. So there's already interest in that number being higher, as it should be. I think that number should be more like 4 hours, Europe-wide. It's the sort of thing that should be EU-led. I mean, obviously not for us anymore, but anyway. The EU are unfortunately completely pathetic when it comes to anything useful on transport, so never mind. Particularly when it comes to rail versus flying and road. Anyway. So there we go. I thought it was quite interesting. So some interesting stuff kind of coming. That I think Martin Lewis tweeted about the same time as the Green Party did. Anyway, what else is in the news? This is bad. This is really bad. CAF's fleet, basically their entire fleet, is at risk, and all of Northern's CAF trains have been stabled up because they've had some yaw damper failures. Yaw dampers are let me get my Wacom out. Oh, let me just do this. Oh my goodness. Right. If I do... Wait a minute, let me just check. Is that working? Yeah, it's working. Good. Hi, Ella. Anyway, right. So, these bits here, there's one of these. And they're attached. You can see they're attached up here with a kind of a welded unit that's kind of here. So like this bit. And then it's attached with a bracket that goes down here, and then the yaw damper is here. Yaw dampers control the rotation of the bogie in plan dimension. So if you can imagine if you're looking down, that's not down. This is down. Looking down here, you've got the tracks like this. There we are. And you've got the wheels, sort of wheel and a wheel and a wheel and a wheel, and there's obviously an axle between them, and then these axles are connected with a thing that's called a bogie, and the amount that rotates this way and this way is controlled by a yaw damper, and that yaw damper allows the control of the oscillation of that wheel set, that pair of wheel sets. In a motion called hunting, yaw dampers control that. So for like metro stock, they're quite flexible. For high speed stock, they're quite stiff. Ideally, you kind of want a yaw damper that does both. You want viscous dampers that allow and kind of viscous axle boxes that allow. Anyway, that's another matter. Anyway, that is a yaw damper, and they broke. The CAF fleet's yaw dampers have been breaking. So this isn't just the 195 and the 331, actually. This puts at risk the Mark 5 coaches, the Mark 5A coaches. It puts at risk the... what else does it do? It puts at risk the... it's all kicking off in the chat. Play nice, everyone. It puts at risk the... what other stock? It puts at risk the 397s. What else? What other CAF stuff is there around? It puts at risk the Welsh fleet, actually, which is relevant to this. Lots of CAF stuff being put at risk by this design flaw, actually. It looks like a design flaw. So bad. The ORR have put a stop notice out, I think, on this. So they're all stabled until they work out what the problem is. I think they went out and they found out that 22 of the fleet have got cracks, these cracks here, indicating problems. So this isn't good. This is a picture up here. This isn't a new issue particularly. This up here, this is a CAF Mark IV over on the island of Ireland. and you can see it broke again, so that's not good. You don't want that to happen for all sorts of reasons. It's not good to fling bits of metal off your train. This is bad. Anyway, yes, the 196s, 195s, 331s, 397s, 197s. Thanks, Simon F. Kendler. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, not all the CAF fleets are withdrawn. They've withdrawn a bunch of 195s, but there are still many running around post checks. Okay, yeah. These are bad things. Anyway, someone got confused with this fleet and thought that it was the Stadlers that had the problem. No, it's the CAFs that have the problem. So I just that's why I wanted to put this in the news. This is bad. So hopefully this is a problem they're going to find a fix to quickly before everyone starts travelling by train again, because that's kind of happening at the moment. There's a ramp up, and it'd be good if they had trains available to make that happen. Yeah. Thanks, Simon, by the way. You're in the chat. Thanks for giving me a heads up on this. It's relevant to today's natter, actually. RIA, the Railway Industry Association, have published they've published 5 kind of regional manifestos, sort of setting their key asks for the devolved and regional elections. So they're go and have a look at those. Google Railway Industry Association Devolution Manifesto, and you'll get the data. Go in and have a look at that. Interesting stuff. Yeah, worth having a look at, and relevant to Wales. It's interesting. They're kind of asking industry-based thing, but they aren't asking of what more things need to happen for devolution from central government. Maybe they're trying not to tread on too many toes. But anyway, what else is in the news? Oh God, yeah. Right, this is the penultimate news item, and we're going to probably talk about this a little bit. This is one of my favourite photos I took, or it was for a while. It's framing. I like it. It's slightly abstract. There's a rail in it. There you can see there's a rail. There we go. There's a rail. There's a rail. And yeah, it's nice. There's some sort of nice canted track. It looks coplanar, actually, doesn't it? It looks coplanar rather than being like that and that. Anyway, is that an adjustment switch as well? Yeah, there's an adjustment switch. See, there's all sorts going on. There's a very badly painted post going on over here. There's hill. There's hill. And yeah, I took this photo on the way to Clwyd-Bothy, kind of going along the loch down towards Ben Alder, and anyway, so it's all good. It's all good stuff. It was wintry. It was nice. But what I hadn't planned, what I was glad hadn't happened, is that someone had thrown a train at me, which is what happened. I don't know when did it happen. A couple of days ago. Yes. So basically, an HST did a derail through a crossover. What's the best way to explain what's going on? Actually, it's probably best way to explain what's going on is for me to rearrange my slide deck. Actually. So I put that there, but actually it's probably easiest for me to do this. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, fine, good. So to explain what happened here, yeah, you can see there is a train, and these wheels are not on the track. This is not a good thing. This usually means that there's a bad thing has happened. Thankfully, it stopped at Dalwhinnie station. So it stopped at Dalwhinnie, and it was going reasonably slowly. These things move pretty quickly, actually. The short form HSTs go like shit off a shovel, but it was going reasonably slowly. I think about 35 miles an hour when it derailed. So no injuries, but still not ideal. Anyway, right, that's that. What had happened? So train parked up here. HST parked here, and it was signalled to so train parked up here, signal to continue along the really not great at my Wacom, signal to go along here along the along the up line. So there we are, along the up, as it should have, and the speed it was allowed to go at is 70, so it was able to go up to 70. Thankfully I hadn't reached that, but instead of the signal was clear, instead of going through as it was supposed to, for some currently unknown reason, it traversed a 15 mile an hour crossover and ended up wrong roading on the down. This is bad. This is not a good thing. You don't want that to happen. And so here's a picture showing kind of what had happened. So you can see the train went round here, and instead of going through, this signal is dropped now, but it was originally up. I presume it's up for clear. It was up. The driver progressed through. And train ended up going through the turnout, and you can see they've ripped this out. The turnout's been ripped out, and they've plane lined it so that presumably because of damage to the trailing switch of the crossover, the facing switch of the crossover isn't actually in too bad nick. Which so you can see here, for example. In fact, let's go to the next picture, which shows it much more clearly. So this shows what's going on here. So firstly, the switch is set for the turnout rather than the through route. But importantly, all these things here, all the things that are here, are not broken. These things that are slightly raised above the sleepers, these stretcher bars, don't appear to be broken. They look fine. And also, by the fact that there is a flangeway gap, the points haven't been split open. So actually, the train's gone through this. Certainly, the switch part of the, or kind of the switch blades part of the facing switch of the crossover, seems to have gone through fine. There's a big kink here, which is partly geometry. Switch geometry can look a bit like that, but my guess, by the fact that you can see that a bearer has been snapped underneath this base plate here, makes me think that there's been a strike force, and this is probably where the derailment, sort of, the wheels possibly have popped over and then derailed the train, kind of going this point onwards. So the first power car and the leading power car, the first 4 coaches went through. The leading bogie of the 5th coach went through. The trailing bogie of the 5th coach did not go through, and neither did the 2 bogies of the trailing power car. There we are. Anyway, this is the information. Bad. Early hours of Saturday. Thank you those commenting in the chat. So not great. I mean, there are people saying this is an into seven city short. Yeah, it's an HST. No, the HSTs aren't out of service. They're still operating in Scotland. You can't polish a turd. They're still HSTs. Anyway, right, so, not good. And the reason this is bad is because this shouldn't have been set this way for the signal to be clear. I'm not going to speculate. I'm waving my arms around. I'm not going to speculate as to what the hell is. I mean, something bad has gone on, right? But I'm not going to speculate as to what that is because, frankly, I have no idea. But those are the material. I've just explained the material facts of what happened. Clearly, it's a pretty substantial error, whether it's operational or signalling or that something bad has happened. But there we are. Those are the material facts as I see them. So here we are. That is the Dalwhinnie derailment. Let's go to... Sorry, Dalwhinnie. It's all blocked. No trains are running. Bad. So, let's move on to something funny again, which is the Rail Delivery Group's whoopsie. They did a whoopsie. So, yeah, if you're a royalist, I'm sorry about my gag earlier if it deeply offended you and you left the chat. I'm so sorry. But, how are we doing? It's 20 minutes in already. Good grief. The news, it just drags on, doesn't it? It's when it's solo episodes. I like chatting about things and catching up with all of you about what's been going on. The Railway Delivery Group they forced, so they by internal decree, basically the Rail Delivery Group told all, and the DFT I think told all railway websites to go grey, or it's some form of greyish grey, to celebrate. No, not celebrate. What's the other word? Commemorate the death of Greek Phil, and this was widely accepted as being a bad thing, very much a bad thing, and it kicked up a bit of a Twitter storm, and as a result of that, RDG, with their tail between their legs, told everyone to switch it back quickly. And I think in a lot of cases, there had been zero thought put into this. The change was done without any sort of equalities impact assessment, which makes it kind of, at worst, potentially illegal. But anyway, basically not very good at all. Discriminatory at the highest level. It's also worth saying that it kind of pointed out what people who have monochromatism and other forms of colourblindness see all the time anyway. So it exposed how crap this website is anyway. Bad all round. Rap knuckles. What's quite funny is that, just absolutely normal island. Britain, completely normal place. Anyway. Yes, indeed, Eddie Owen. So... it got me asking a poll on the Twitter, which is whether we should keep the National Rail Inquiry's website. So that was the National Rail Inquiry's website, by the way, which is by far the worst of the websites for booking train tickets on. It's just dreadful. I mean, it's only narrowly beaten by some of the kind of the niche split ticketing websites that exist out there in terms of how bad it is. Anyway, so most people think, I asked the question whether to merge them all into one or to kind of broadly keep the websites as they are. So lots of individual top websites on the National Rail Inquiry's website. Only 15% of people said they wanted them to stay as separate websites, and 85% of people were like, no, merge them into one. And in fact, this poll is still going. So if you're interested, go vote in the poll. Basically what we've discovered in this sorry tale is that the Rail Delivery Group are capable. I always said they only do one thing, which is the annual stations competition on Twitter. But actually, it seems like they do two things, which is the annual stations competition on Twitter and making an absolute hash of everyone's access to their website. So solid work, absolutely solid work. Minor breach of the Equalities Act, no bother, as Tom says. Yeah. Anyway, right. So, yeah. What should Wales's railways look like? No, that's a different episode title. What is it? What should the Welsh railway map look like? Well, people already had people sending me this, suggesting what it should look like. So, if you want to vote in the poll, it's on Twitter, by the way. Just go onto my profile and you'll find it. Just search National Rail Inquiries in my handle. You'll get there. What should they be like? Well, we're already 21 minutes into the episode. Let's have a look, shall we? Without further ado, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. As the Intercity 225 fades away, look at it go, there it is, fades away. Oh, actually, we have a calf train up, don't we? Awkward. Here's a nice picture. So I put up either, but actually, let's the railway. Well, Wales's railways, some of them look a bit more like this. Actually, this is a 3-track railway. Very few of them look like this. It'd be nice if more of them look like this, although OLE required. No, we are going to look at the Welsh railway map. I need to just go in here. Wait a minute. Let me just go in here. Yeah. So there are a lot of people chomping at the bit, I am sure, but a warning, which is don't expect this episode to be a like what railway lines are we going to reopen episode. This is not this is not an episode about reversing beaching. Wait a minute, where am I pressing buttons? Yeah, this is not a beaching episode. No, it's not a beaching episode. So don't, in the chat, you can talk about reversing this and reopening that all you like, but it's essentially not relevant. I'm not interested in reopening old railway lines. I'm interested in looking at what the Welsh railway map should look like. And I'm going to do that with data, with lots of different sorts of data, but actually, I say lots of different sorts of data. No, quite a simple data set actually. Will Deacon is in the chat. Hi, Will. Thanks for sending me through the stuff. I got it geo-coordinated eventually, and we're all good. And I think what we're going to create, what I'm going to show you on screen, hopefully, will be quite interesting. Oh, let's get my face up anyway. Where am I? Let's go. Hello, I'm in the corner. Hi, everyone. Yes, I've blown out everyone's eardrums with my QI klaxon there. Lovely. Everyone in audio form is now like spitting blood at me. Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm looking at Wales. Wales has a devolved transport system now-ish. And Gareth Williams, I did not promise this was a beaching episode. Stop teasing. Yes, data the thing beaching was lacking. Well, he wasn't necessarily lacking. Anyway, this isn't a beaching episode. I'll have to klaxon myself again. Right, so... the trouble with the Welsh railway network is that it isn't one. So Transport for Wales don't have a single railway network. They actually have one railway network and two, or if you like, 3 railway networks that are entirely separate from each other. And let's go in here. So here it is. Here is the said railway map. And you'll notice something here. You'll notice an issue. And that is that, there, and there, and also here, and also here, and there, and also there, and there. You'll notice that, so that's all of this that is not in Wales. Nope, that's all not in Wales. It's not in Wales. So it's not, which means that you've got a bit of network here. If you ignore the Festiniog Railway, which you never should do, by the way, then that's one bit of network. Then another bit of network there, sort of entirely separate bit of network. And then you've got this larger bit, which admittedly serves most people in Wales. You've got this bit here. Sorry, I don't know why I've cut out the Cardiff Airport and Barry Island. Whoops. Anyway, you've got 3 separate networks, if you like, or rather maybe kind of a network and 2 bits of railway line with stuff attached. This is rubbish. This is a problem. It's a real problem. And it's a problem for people who live in, it's a problem for people who live in Aber, who want this Aber, not Abergavenny, by the way. It's a problem for people in Aberystwyth who want to get down to Cardiff. That's a bit of an issue. It's a problem for people in Aberystwyth who want to get up to, Carnarvon, which is here, or, Holyhead. It's an issue for all sorts of reasons. Wales, and this is, I suppose it's an interesting point, and we'll get to it later. There's a kind of a reason why the Welsh network looks like it does. One of them is geography. There are many, many hills across Wales, as we'll look at when we get Google Earth up shortly. But that's not the only thing, and we'll talk about why it's a problem when I get the maps up later. But first, let's talk about economics and demography. Economics and demography. Will Deacon is asking me to find Llangamarch Wales. It'll be up here. There's Llangamarch. There we are. It's on the Heart Wales line. There, Will. Job done. Right. So, I had a feeling it'd be South Wales. I don't know why. Right. Economics and demography. So, let's look at some numbers first of all. So, Wales's population-ish, 3.136 million people. That's quite a bit more than Northern Ireland with only 1.8 million people, but quite a lot less than Scotland with 5.4 million people. Wales has got a very small fraction of the total. Is it 5% of the total UK population? Something like that. How much is it? 5, 6, 67, less than that even. Anyway, small amount. So, and also if you look at the cities, let's look at, if you look at Cardiff, Newport, so that kind of built up that kind of urban area, it's just over 1 million people, 1.1 million people. The West Midlands is 3 million people, almost as is Greater Manchester, and West Yorkshire is 2.3 million. So actually, basically, both the West Midlands, so the kind of the West Midlands kind of urban area, and Greater Manchester both have a population basically the same as all of Wales. So this is this isn't in itself a problem. It's just an idea of scale and a particular potential challenges that we might face. So here's a good map that kind of gives you an idea of population density. So this is a nice pure population density map showing that you have you've got some pretty populated areas here in North Wales and kind of around here, so like Mold and Flint and kind of Flintshire is pretty populated, along with kind of North Wales here and Bangor actually as well. This extends this funny like sausage shape. It's pretty well populated. Then you've got kind of Cardiff Newport, which is sort of this bit, and then you've got Swansea, which is this bit. They're two kind of fairly urban. And actually, the reality is this is sort of one. This basically acts as one connected kind of conurbation-ish. Although it doesn't count as a single metropolitan area, it is a large kind of urbanized area. And then you've got some coastal stuff that's going on down here, but much lower population densities. A little bit down here, but much lower population densities in West Wales. So yeah, you can see very very sparsely populated for the most part. There's Jack here. It's nice. I've cycled much of it, but actually even when you cycle it you end up going through the towns, but this is empty. There ain't nothing there. So Alistair Baldwin is here. Yeah, just over 1 million people is Tyne and Wear, so Cardiff Newport is equal to Tyne and Wear. Yeah, that's a really good comparison. Thanks Alistair. So and let's look at economics. And I'm not an economist at all, but this is just useful. I suppose this is a very rudiment. And Tom Forth has shouted at me for using GDP. And in fact, lots of people have shouted at me because GDP is not a great measure of many things. But I thought it's a broadly accepted per capita is a broadly accepted way of comparing, how vibrant an economy is, right? So Wales has got about £24,000 per capita GDP. Northern Ireland is about the same. Scotland is about 30, so it's quite a lot more, £30,000 per capita. I think these are all 2018-ish figures, so things have probably got quite a bit worse since then. Anyway, 30,000 per capita, that's not great. As a comparison, that's not great. Wales is quite a lot lower than Scotland. Scotland has a bigger population, but it's also got much larger distances between some of its population. So, that's quite a substantial difference, and a lot of that is agglomeration effects of the success of the Central Belt, actually. But that is averaged out then by all the kind of distant populations. And yet, look at Cardiff Newport, 18.2 thousand pounds per capita. Whereas you look at Birmingham, it's 19,000, a bit more, and there's a lot of very, very deprived areas in Birmingham. So I've changed from West Midlands to Birmingham because the data is for the metropolitan area, not for the wider sort of conurbation. Manchester, 21,000, so more than Cardiff Newport. Leeds Bradford, more than Cardiff Newport. And there was a quote for a while that said that Leeds' economy is larger than Wales's, but to the extent to which that's true, I'm not sure. But anyway, basically, Wales is underachieving as a nation, as a country. Wales is underachieving, and transport is, to my mind, you could cite a million papers on that, but I don't care about England's because it's such a major lump that it's difficult to compare averages. I suppose I could have dumped it in as an average, but we're not competing with England. We're kind of looking at some of the other kind of devolved nations, countries, to understand their yeah. And you can go and Google it. So I'm sure someone can drop it in the chat in what London and what the rest of England's is. But I'm going to bring a thing up which hopefully will be kind of a visual comparison, which is looking at so pink bad, blue good. This is a comparison of GDP per inhabitant in 2018 numbers. And you can see here that areas that are doing very badly are like the southern bit of Scotland, and all of Wales, apart from the bit next to England, is very red. Also, Scunny and Grimsby, and also that appears to be is that South Yorkshire there? Possibly, I can't quite tell because I've scribbled all over it. But anyway, that does look kind of like South Yorkshire. There is also pretty deprived. Anyway, areas that are not doing great economically, Cornwall as well. So these are areas that have really bad. And the thing that bad transport connections, right? So a way to fix that is by having a better, more connected country. Hence why this whole episode is a thing. And I'm half an hour into the episode, and I've only just sort of finished my hypothesis, kind of reached the point of my hypothesis. Anyway, it's also, Gareth Williams, you're absolutely right. It's unfair to look at England on its own because its regions are so diverse. And to an extent, that's true for Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, really. You know, Belfast, the rest of Northern Ireland is quite kind of, it's an unfair comparison. But, England is so much larger that you really do kind of lose the value in the comparison, essentially. South Yorkshire. Thanks, James P. Yes, transport is the major factor in this. So let's have a look at the current network in Wales. I've put in network in inverted commas for reasons previously mentioned. So here is in green. And I prematurely pre-guessed my scribbling. But actually, as you remember, this is one bit, which is the basically the whole the Cambrian line and the Cambrian coastline. It does have Bow Street. Hooray! This is a recent map because that's very new. Hooray! Hi, my parents who live, basically between these two, but not because Talbot's sort of there. Anyway, this is a schematic map anyway. There's all this stuff, obviously, which is substantial, proper, big, that is a very dense, fairly dense railway network. There definitely could be improvements, not least to regional connectivity. And then you've got the North Wales main line, which is its own thing. Oh, that was not quite right because that bit as well. Yeah, there we are. Then you get the gist. I think you all get the gist. So three unconnected bits. So an obvious thing that we're going to come up with in this episode is how do you connect those up? Like, what's the sensible way to connect those up? But rather than just like the way that, and I think I'm going to annoy a lot of people by the end of this episode for what the conclusion will be. And I don't want to second guess that because I want to kind of take you all through it. But the answer isn't necessarily what a lot of people think it is. Let's just say, according to my kind of data-driven approach, simple but data-driven approach, the answer is not what a lot of people think it is. So, let's not do that yet because I'm going to alt-tab to the old Google Earth. Here is that there Wales. Here it is. Nice, isn't it? And here's the existing railway network. As you can see, there's a gap here. There's a gap, that bit on its own, and then there's a gap, and then there's this bit on its own. I've kind of kept where the line kind of skirts along the border. I've kind of let it keep. I've not split it out. I've just kind of let it go a little bit beyond the border to keep it. And so you see the same here. It kind of follows the border because the railway's following a river. Essentially, that's why it kind of skips in and out. And the border follows the old route of the river, to my mind, here. So it's following the old river route, which you can see. In fact, the good thing about Google, you can see where the river used to be by the shape of the field. It's always interesting, isn't it? Anyway, I digress. And you can see the density of service in South Wales. Now, why is the railway network like this? And if I switch on the former railway lines as well, so these are the former lines, the network looks a bit better when you put the old this is not exhaustive, but it's the majority of the main lines that kind of crisscross the country. this railway line, the kind of this network, particularly in South Wales, is a railway network that you might see in fact, Ollie off of the National Railway Museum did a really good thread about this. This is the sort of rail map that you might see in one of the various sort of imperial coastal regions in the continent of Africa. You know, you see in various sort of countries, you know, particularly on the kind of the sub-Saharan coast, you know, the west coast, and then on the kind of further south on the kind of the southeastern coasts of the various African countries down that side, you'll see railway networks that look like this because they're designed for resource extraction. These are designed to take things that are in the ground here and send them this way. And indeed get them to harbours to then send them elsewhere. This is the sort of railway map that's designed to extract resources at pace. And Wales isn't entirely guilt-free of Britain's imperial atrocities, but at the same time, Wales as a country very much also was, you know, simultaneously, you know, history is not straightforward and simple, but Wales was also a victim of kind of the British Empire. And the fact that this whole railway network basically was set up to just strip resources out of the country and send them to England and send them to the rest of the world as part of the broader imperial sort of machine is what part of the reason why the network's so crap. The other reason, of course, is mountains or hills. It's not a hill. Go and watch the Englishman who went up a hill and came down a mountain. It's wonderful. Anyway, Brecon Beacons, Cambrian Mountains, Snowdonia, particularly Big Snowdonia, and then like other mountains that are kind of south of Snowdonia, all this lump, which kind of counts as Snowdonia. Anyway, all that, those do stop railways from happening when railways are being built on the cheap as freight and time isn't critical. Time isn't critical, you know, if you've got particularly down here where you've got materials that you don't need to move them quickly, you just need to move them reliably and at volume, then you know, interconnectivity isn't so important. You can kind of follow you can have a slow weavy railway line without too much of an issue. Matt Reed, I've no idea how many railways in Wales closed. It's kind of, yeah, lots, I'm sure. People could probably quote how many stations closed. But anyway, so what are the frequencies on these lines, asks Socorro. So on these lines, well, this basically, so the Cambrian line is like 2 hourly. The North Wales line, what is it? It's not so bad. I think the frequencies out to like Llandudno are a bit better. Sorry, not Llandudno, like Glanconwy. No, not Glanconwy, sorry. Yeah, it is Llandudno. Llandudno Junction, technically, are not bad. I can't remember what they are. Down here, they're more like kind of like half hourly or better frequencies to Newport. Maybe it's even like slightly less than that if you include the GWR services. So, hell of a mixture. And TFW have plans to kind of improve those frequencies. You know, that's fine. That's great. I mean, plans for this to become 1 hour for a very long time. Why am I using my mouse when I've got the Wacom in here? Anyway, yeah, this bit. Let me just press E. This bit here, there have been plans for this to be 1 hourly for like decades, basically. It might as well be decades, certainly a decade. Yeah, so anyway, not great. So, right, let's crack on, shall we? So that was Wales, looking at Wales. So let's talk about let's do the bit that you're all interested in, which is how I've petri dished a passenger rail network. The reason I put passenger there is because the data set I've looked at is humans, not freight, because you could kind of come up with you could use this approach to do the same thing for a freight network, but it felt a bit more esoteric and a bit more arbitrary, and probably you'd need more clever stuff. And to be honest, I'd need to start thinking about other data sets to make it make sense. So just looking at passenger network, I think I can get away with making this make sense without, in a more straightforward way, in such a way that I can talk to you about in an hour, however many minutes this episode's going to be. So, what are we going to do? Well, first of all, I'm going to play a pre-recorded video because I don't have MicroStation on this computer, so I can't. What I can do is, what can I do? I can click away from. Here's Wales. Hooray! There's Wales. So we've got a nice outline of Wales. This is me and my work laptop. So Wales. Then what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to start bringing up some. So I've switched off Wales because we don't care about geography. I'm just going to look at this as I'm basically going to do let me just click out of here and also do this. And this. So I'm doing some. Let me just make sure this is still doing a thing. Yeah, there we go. So what I want to do is basically I'm forgetting about the shape and the geography of Wales. What I'm doing is plotting out In fact, let me just go down here and let me just let me drag. That's fine. Oh, I'll tell you what. Let me just put it back to let's put it back to the start of the video again. So, what we're going to do is draw. We've got Wales, but we're going to ignore the boundary of Wales, and what I'm going to drop in are blobs, and those blobs represent settlements with a series of populations. So the first blobs are for the 3 settlements in Wales that have a population greater than 100,000, which is Cardiff, Newport, and Swansea. So that's those. Then I'm going to drop in the ones that are between 50,000 and 100,000, which are there are 3 more. Oh god, I'm going to try and remember them. So one of them is Port like Neath Port. One of them is it Barry actually? That's its own thing. I have to check. I think it's Barry. Is it Barry? Yeah. And then the one up north is oh god, it's Wrexham, isn't it? I think it's Wrexham. Everyone can correct me on that. Hi Ella. So next, what's the next? And then the next block of places, I'm then going to drop in the towns that are between 10,000 and 50,000. So that's kind of, you can see there are more of those appearing. So you've got like Aberystwyth and Newport have appeared. So I think you can all see my mouse. Yeah, Aberystwyth has appeared, Newport has appeared, and then obviously all the towns that kind of along the north coast have appeared, plus lots and lots in the valleys and around here. And then the last sort of set is, and this is me following essentially the rules of the, essentially following the Scottish Green Party's rules of places larger than 5,000. I've then dropped in the towns that have a population of larger than 5,000. So any Machynlleth fans, sorry, Machynlleth does not have a population. It's only like 3,000 people who live there. So this is the fun bit. So isn't Port a suburb of Swansea anyway? Well, yeah, but they're towns individually, and so from my perspective, I'd want, you'd want a minimum of a station to serve that place. This felt like okay, it's rudimentary, but actually, you'll see as I go with this, you'll see that it works quite neatly. So we now have, ignoring the shape of Wales, I mean, you can sort of see where the shape of Wales is, but we now have a series of nodes. So if you even ignore those shapes, each of those blotches, and it's not entirely clear, but some of these down here are multiple kind of townships. So areas that belong to a town that have, there are a few of them. So these solid blue blotches aren't just one town or settlement. That's in some cases several settlements. So 3,000 people is a big village, not a town. Indeed, don't tell Machynlleth that. Yeah, sorry, Mach. So, oh, did I say? Yeah, where are we? What did I say? Newtown. Oh, did I say Newport? I meant Newtown. This is Newtown. Obviously, this is Newtown. This big lump here is Newtown. So, what am I going to do next? Well, what I'm going to do next is a series of interconnectors. So, when you have a network map, you have nodes and you have links, if you like. So, you've got, network map. You have. That's my. Oh, I want to do this. That's why. Let me just do this and then. Anyway, right. So you'll see what I'm about to do. I'm about to make the interconnectors happen. So the first one I've done is I've made interconnectors happen between the 3 major settlements in Wales. So between Swansea, Cardiff, and Newport. So that's a major kind of interconnector, major link. Let's keep going. See what the next one is. So the next, so I've switched off everything but those. So you can see if we're just connecting the kind of main places, we've done that with those 3. So next we're going to go for. So we've got these 3 settlement, the slightly larger settlements. What I've done is then kind of increase the resolution of that network to include those places between 50 and 100,000. So that increases the resolution of that network, so you can see that it's become a little more complicated. You see, we have a north-south connection up to Wrexham. Let's keep doing this and see where we get to. So then, if I bring up the settlements that are between 10 and 50,000, and then I increase the resolution, and then I'll switch off the previous one. You can see now I'm increasing the resolution, if you like, of that network. Now you can see that we've already started to get a thing that looks like a network map starting to appear, and this is serving any settlements over 10,000. So you'll see why people are going to be upset. The last population group is 5,000 to 10,000. It's the population bracket, the last bracket. You can see why I'm already talking about the fact that I'm going to upset some people in this video. But anyway, so And let's do it once more with the last population density, or sorry, the last population group. So this is the towns that are 5,000. So 5,000 above. And again, I've increased the resolution of the network map. You can see it's become more complicated, if you like. And this isn't perfect. I've drawn these manually. If I was doing this, like as eventually I hope to do so, either later this year or next year, when I start doing this GB wide, I will use actual sort of network kind of node and link creating algorithms rather than me just manually doing it in MicroStation. But I think you get the, like, for example, I might have more kind of triangulations here. This is essentially just creating a triangulation mesh between all these nodes with a rule to not create a link if the distance is greater than a certain amount. So that's essentially what's happening here. So given that the longest distance is probably Aber to Newtown, I'd set something slightly larger than that to be the link distance limit, and then let the algorithm draw all the nodes as required. And you might see more of a much more dense mesh. But this is me doing it manually, and I think it gets the point across for the process. It's starting to look like Orion. Yeah, very good, Gareth. So nice example of applied graph theory. Must use it when teaching. Yeah, hopefully. So this is following, like, this is a variety. This is kind of interdisciplinary. There's a few different kind of scientific disciplines and statistical disciplines coming in here. Detour, I'm so glad you're on this because you can shout at me when I do things wrong. But also, hopefully, this is kind of visually interesting. I hope the graphics are not too invisible for people. Anyway, so there you can see I've created this shape, which is kind of nominally what a network might look like. So let's keep playing. Let me keep playing the video, and I'll kind of talk through what's going on. So, what am I going to switch off next? I can't remember. I think I switch off all of the. So if I, yeah. So there we go. So I'm switching all of the lines back on. So that's like if we had a regional network. So almost if you're overlaying them, it's almost like the blue network is the local network. The dark blue, sorry, the slightly less dark blue is the kind of a regional network. The even slightly less blue would be the kind of cross national, this is the sort of Welsh regional network, and then this last one, the kind of the cyan line. Really, that's probably just like you want to have a very high density, probably want to have a high density metro kind of serving those as is happening. South Wales Metro, hooray! Watch that episode. So, so here we are. This is actually these various overlaid nodes and links give what that network is going to look like operationally, if not geographically yet. Although geographically you can sort of see what's going on. So let me continue. What do I switch off next to just make it clear? And don't worry, I'm going to go into Google Earth where I have all these lines and nodes, and we can switch them off and on as required. So here's Wales. I think I'm going to now overlay this with lines. So yeah, so you can see now how that fits. So there's the high density, the slightly less high density regional, the sort of localish, the regional one, and then the kind of the major high density connections between the largest places. And that's kind of like, there's your map basically. These are to the centroids of the settlements, not to stations, by the way. So again, that's a correction you could make. But I was just doing it to the center of mass of each of the center of the shape of each of those lumps. So you can see the huge density down in South Wales, but actually some reasonable density up in northeast Wales as well. That doesn't really exist at the moment. So let's keep playing. I think what else am I going to switch off now? I think maybe progressively just switch stuff off and show you. So that's kind of showing, they are showing the and then the last sort of connection between obviously the major centers. So that's, hopefully everyone's followed that methodology. Does that make sense? So there's people pointing out no redundancy building a new Cornwall. You don't need redundancy if you build a modern decent system. But anyway, you're right, and we'll kind of get to that discussion in a bit. Anyway, so that's going to go in the background. I'm going to pause that. Let's get Google Earth up, shall we? Here we are. So, actually, oh yeah, I'll bring that up later. Anyway, so let's switch off the existing networks. We don't care. First of all, we're going to put up, so the largest places we've got there's Wales. You've got Swansea, you've got Cardiff, you've got Newport. Then let's switch on the others. So what was that? It was Talbot Neath, Barry. Is Barry really that large? And then Wrexham. Where are we? Let's put up bigger stuff. So you've got Newtown, you've got Aber, you've got Carmarthen, and then you're over to Pembroke and blah blah blah, and then you've got North Wales as well. And then the last lump is where we switch on the smaller places, and that essentially starts. And you can see where that connection. If you're going to have a north-south connection in Wales, if you're going to invest in the infrastructure, surely do it where you're going to connect up the most people and actually connect up the largest kind of centres of population. So so that's where quite naturally you quite quickly see. So if I draw the lines over the top of that, so I've got you can see the existing railway underneath. If I draw the lines on top of that, so the kind of the obvious major high density connections are those ones. Then slightly, and this kind of, so having all of these different ones would be how you'd set your service frequencies, for example, if you're going to derive it, and potentially the quality and kind of fidelity of the infrastructure, the capacity of the infrastructure, and then you can see so. When we start bringing that north-south connector, you can see that then if you think about where the larger places are, it kind of flips over to Newport and then at Newtown, and then adding the last sort of nodes, so going to those 5,000, the population 5,000 places, you can see where that network really ends up. So if I deselect all the smaller ones, this basically is then the shape of the network. And if you want to know where the north-south connection is, yes, it is not on it's not on the coast. It is in fact connecting between up from. I think I was going to leave my laptop on so I could hover over things and know exactly the place. I think that's Brecon, isn't it? Brecon, then, is that Bilth? Is it Bilth Wells? Yeah, it must be Bilth Wells. Then up to Newtown. Then is that Welsh Pool? Yeah, it's Welsh Pool. And then up. And this is an interesting one because actually, if you're building the new infrastructure, you might skip. You might just, for the sake of connecting up a population centre, ignoring the boundary, you be a bit mean to skirt around the Welsh border. But maybe you would. But actually, it would make more sense to go in and kind of connect Oswestry up into the fold, because Oswestry has no railway station. It's just on a flipping. It's a huge town with no connection. But we're not doing this for England. We're doing it for Wales. So if we were going to, you might be trite and skirt round. But geographically, it'd actually be easier to go up through and make use of some of the alignment through Oswestry, perhaps. Anyway, then up into the dense areas into Wrexham. And then up into and kind of then up into Mold, Flint, and so on. And actually, you can see there's a density, there's kind of quite high density kind of network here. I've not actually included the little connector because this counts as one settlement across the river. But anyway, let's not worry too much about that. So that's the network map. So yeah, that's just, and this is, don't get too angry at me yet, because this is just what the network map would look like if you only looked at creating a network based on those population centres. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but that is, if you think that there are no significant population centres between Aber and Carmarthen, none at all. Likewise, heading northwards, there are none at all. So if we keep those, let's keep those up. Let's just keep the kind of the 5 to 10k, so the high density mesh up. Let's then dump the existing railway network on top and have a think about that. Well, let's see. So, what are the questions? Is it worth considering populations near the border on the English side? Yeah, Eddie, I think we kind of talked a little bit about that. Simon Zev Kendler is saying that this is fab and you can't wait to see how this progresses around the GB. Yeah, it's interesting. I need to write the algorithm. Wales is fairly straightforward because there are only about 100 settlements, but this is impossible for me to do for the whole UK. Yeah. So I need to code this for it to work. So I need to start learning Python. James P. Might it make sense to weight harbours additionally as they draw additional traffic naturally? Yep, that's not an unreasonable thing to do, and I think we're going to talk about that in my next slide. So if I whiz to the next slide. Right, yeah, so let's talk about incorporating OD data. So this is origin destination data, which I think the UK has a quite good set of OD data. I don't know how well geo-coordinated it is and how easy it is to import it and pin it to those links. But if we get back to Google Earth, if I whiz Google Earth back now and switch everything off, except our we'll compare the existing network and the current and the proposed network in a minute. Actually, we'll do that shortly. But first, so you can see if I go in here, you can see there are lots of like duplicated connections. There are lots of things that, for example, this link here, you wouldn't have this link and this link as well. You'd kind of combine them. But one of the things you could look at is, and this is if you looked at OD pairs, is you'd start weighting some of these links. So you'd look at how many people travel from, say, Brecon, kind of this direction, and it wouldn't just be the number of people who make that journey directly. You'd also be plumbing in the people who make any potential journeys. Other way, kind of you'd probably reasonably straightforward, but also reasonably complicated to code simultaneously, and having OD pairs kind of overlay such that it chooses the favourable kind of through route, the shortest sort of distance, if you like, and then drops the OD pairs in to kind of put weightings on each of these links. And then by putting the weightings on those links, you'd probably start to evaporate some of them. just looking at OD pairs. And that would also, again, inform you about the weight of the infrastructure. So I'm kind of basically describing a methodology for creating a railway network here. A passenger one, not a freight one. Obviously, you need to overlay more things to start thinking about a proper railway network. There's more at stake than just pure population. For example, you'd be thinking about, right, we'll talk about that in my next little bit. But again, you'd sort of look at people. So, for example, people going to Cardiff from here. Where is this? This is, oh golly, where is that? Anyway, right, tell me where this... My North Welsh geography is getting bad. Anyway, people going to Cardiff would use this node, so this node would get some weighting, and so some of those weight nodes and how close those nodes, those links are together, the kind of the internode links, that would potentially bias which ones you then kind of... which ones of those you Thanos. So, yeah... Up here, it's kind of more obvious that there's not much going on. So, but actually, again, I think I'd have more. There would be. I'd have, if I was creating this properly, I'd have had more triangulated links. So I've only done one here really, but actually I should have more triangular links between these kind of population centers. So, it is a network annealing problem. Yeah. So using the data I've put forward so far, this is a very easy problem to, even with the OD dropping the OD pairs in, because those the OD data, that origin destination data is just kind of numbers. It'd be very easy. So far, what I've described is relatively speaking, very easy to code. Rithin, thank you. It's Rithin. Thanks, Tone McStone. If you're weighting based on OD pairs, doesn't that bias it towards mimicking the existing rail network? Well, my logic is that I wouldn't look at OD pairs for the rail network. I'd be looking at OD pairs for overall travel. Yes, you're probably right. There is a level of bias there, and maybe that would, you'd need to sort of do a bit of study and understand how to account for that, how to account for those movements, and you'd potentially look at weighting towards another thing. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Right, so that's OD pairs, right? Next, we're going to look at so overlaying on reality. So this is where we're now going to talk about the other stuff. So I think OD pair data includes all. I think it includes everything. So it's not just rail. It's everything. So let me get Google Earth back. So overlaying on reality. So first thing of what we just described. Yeah, very good point. Ella, yeah, you're waving. I know, right? This is interesting stuff. But you've got degree and stuff. As many other people have jobs to do. So this is going to be. I mean, I'd like lots of people to volunteer and make this happen, and it to be a wonderful crowdsourced effort. And there is a part of the Discord server where people, hopefully more people who are getting involved in this, who think they could be interested, can get involved. At me in the Discord if you're interested in doing some of this stuff and you think you've got ideas of how this could work and you've got ideas about how it could be modified, particularly in this section we're going to talk about, not for very long. It's nearly 8 o'clock. We're not doing too badly actually, time-wise. I don't think this is going to be a dramatic overrun. We're nearly there. So I'm not going to actually draw lines on the map as to. We'll have a look at what the actual north-south main line where it might be and what it might look like, but we'll get there. For now, overlaying on reality. So in combination with those OD pairs, yeah, weightings. You're talking about weightings. So yes, you'd potentially wait for things like other transport connections. So if you've got harbours, for example, so connecting up to the harbours. Obviously, freight. This is ignoring freight. So, and I wouldn't just want to look at existing freight flows. You'd need HGV freight flows. So from my perspective, I'm not looking at OD. I wouldn't want to import any data that's rail only because you're just embedding the existing. Obviously, you're just going to replicate the existing rail network, which is pointless. I want to bring in all the OD data, all the origin destination data for all forms of transport. So, flying, regional flights, short haul, but also mostly, let's face it, car, van, HGV. So those are and that HGV data, particularly if you look at some of the flows of, if you look at the oh god, I've had an absolute mind blank. What am I used to? What are the milk lorries that hammer through Talabont? I'm used to dodging them on my way down the A487, and there's actually quite a lot of. Someone in the chat, I'll give it to me. There's quite a lot of freight flow down here, down along the coast. And if you started bringing in some of that stuff, you might find that those... So if you drop it overlaid some sort of sensible freight network following this logic, you might find similar things happen. So that could be very interesting. So anyway. What other stuff? That's when also you'd start looking at... You might start weighting some of these links by... geographical complexity. Or you might do something like overlay the existing railway network, which then, if you can sensibly achieve things using existing infrastructure corridors, then do so. Do so if you can do it. And then you might use some of the outputs from this to suggest that you need to do line speed improvements or capacity enhancements. But so for example, you can see things like, based on this, stuff that's useless and wouldn't. I'm not suggesting it should be closed, because these things are kind of local lifelines. But bits of railway network that you could potentially not deprecate, but you would. You know what I mean? This is. I'm not proposing like some sort of second round of beaching. I would never close the railway lines that are already open. That would be bonkers. But what you would do is you'd enhance the ones that do parallel this network that you create. So you can see major gaps. There needs to be connections, sort of some of these things. If you looked at OD pairs and it was sufficiently weighted, you'd be looking at creating networks where lines don't currently exist. In South Wales, it's not such a bad thing, but the interconnections are awful. So everything comes down to, you have to come all the way down to get all the way back up. And frankly, that's not good enough when roads connect these up. So you should be looking at making railways that connect up the heads of the valley, that connect up sort of halfway down the valley. Railways that did exist that don't anymore, which, okay, you can look at the former railway alignments and sort of see some of these. But actually, there are places where, there are bits of network that do exist currently that make sense, and there are bits of railway network, there are obvious sort of links on our network map that are currently satisfied. There are also large gaps. And the large gap that I'm thinking of is very much Brecon up to Bilf and then up to Newtown. That's a major gap. And frankly, if you looked at OD pairs of that, and you'd have to do so thinking about connection, you'd have to do so thinking about all the connections coming from North to South Wales, that would justify some pretty hefty investment. Yeah, exactly. Everyone on here basically should know me. You should all know that I'm not advocating for any railway closures here. However, I am going to say this now, that I do not think reopening the Carmarthen to Aberystwyth line is a sensible use of resources at this point. I think even if you looked at freight, it doesn't, do a better bus service, improve the bus service, improve the frequency of the bus service. I do not think that railway is a priority. I think a far higher priority would be improving the connectivity north-south, kind of making some of those connections sort of northward, connecting up to Brecon by rail. There's some major railway gaps as it is. Connecting up to Brecon and then heading northwards feels like a better use of resources, frankly. According to this methodology, there is more at stake. There is certainly more at stake. Lots of people think that it's an easy win. But this is such a slow. You look at the existing railway alignment. It's such a slow weaving route that the difference in time between going via Shrewsbury and then down to Cardiff versus going via Carmarthen is probably pretty similar. So I don't know. I'm very cynical of the need to reopen the Carmarthen railway line, which I know as a railway nut you'd expect me to be like. That would not be a thing that you'd expect me to say, right? Would it be better for the environment to reopen it though? Well, no, because there is a lot of embodied carb, not if it's at the expense of doing other things. So if all the energy goes into reopening that line versus enhancing connections between the kind of the major populations of North and South Wales, no, I don't think so. I don't think it is. It's more about the thing. So yes, tourist-led services are valuable, absolutely all these things. And obviously in this section, we're talking about overlaying. That sort of data is the sort of thing that you would add into this to make this model more and more complex, more and more complicated. But and again, integrated transport. So you'd expect an integrated bus connections to Carmarthen and then rail, rather than the bus that goes all the way to Cardiff and you get a ticket to Cardiff. No, it should be integrated ticketing. So the bus goes to Carmarthen and then you get on the train and it's all tied together. But I don't think reopening the line between Aberystwyth and Carmarthen is a good use of resources. And this sort of data process, I had that inkling before, and this process has sort of made me feel that a bit stronger. Anyway. So I think that's quite interesting. That doesn't mean that you're wrong if you do think it should reopen. There's lots of evidence, and lots of other reasons to reopen that railway line. But the rail natters are a point of discussion. They're not sort of. My word is not the word of. It's not. There's not a rail natter Bible that you have to adhere by. But that's kind of where I get to kind of following this process. Anyway, let's see, what have I said next? So that's overlaying on reality. Right, yeah, so, Will, pictures are about to appear that you might like. Adapting and developing. So we talked a bit about that, and we're going to go and have a look at that map in a second and where the lines should be, but let's get through the body of this first. So, and remind me to do that later as well. Anyway, so I do have my pen out. Yeah, look, pen. The Wacom pen. Would that middle blue bit that joins the two yellow bits be phase 1? Yeah, we'll maybe have a look at where... I'm going to look in more detail at the north-south thing at the end, kind of once I've got through the chunks of this. But there's other data sets to... So in terms of going from... if you started from scratch, here's what the railway network should look like, to, right, how do you strategize in terms of deciding where do you augment the existing network and where do you have to build new? Well, some of that... And indeed, some of the stuff relating to potential new, because the map of population density is not as straightforward as here are large towns, here are small towns. And so I'm going to bring up this image first. This is an image Will Deakin, Will and I have created. Hi, Will. This is an image that I've created, and that he and I have created. And it's this is a visualization of a relationship between... I was going to do a graphic to show the relationship between the two. Basically, this is a relationship between population density and distance from a railway station. So, let's zoom in. For example, Cardigan, miles from a railway station, so it's got this high density, and you can see some of the blood kind of splodges in here of kind of higher density. This is going right down to much higher density than just looking at towns and settlements. So that this shows that there is a higher resolution of data, and it's the sort of thing that allows you to create a more high density map anyway. So you don't build a single station for all of Cardiff, obviously. So this is the sort of thing that allows you to make more accurate decisions. So this is looking at it in a more accurate scale and gives an indication of the level of resolution you could go to. And in fact, we've created this. Will's created this for all of GB, so you can see we've got some Brizzle over here as well. Bits of Brizzle that are distinctly short of railway connections there that you can make your mind up on. Anyway, so yeah, and you can see interestingly there appear to be some gaps within Cardiff as a result of distances from and this we probably need to tweak this because there's a challenging relationship between population density and distance from a station because so much of Britain is not very dense. And several orders of magnitude at the other end is places like Leith, Edinburgh, Leith, central Cardiff, central Birmingham, the places that are very high density. So, but it's interesting to look at this. So this is more resolution, but it's kind of taking into account the existing network. And this is the sort of data set that you could use to then bias or weight the what we've done previously. Will Deacon is saying hello. Yeah, this is the sort of stuff you could weight that network that we've done previously. So this is one example of a data set that you could weight our original kind of process with. Yeah, I just thought I'd whiz around. It's interesting just looking. Our plan by the end of this year is to put this up in a portal, and it's in fact to put up several of these data sets up in a portal. So the kind of the town play that'll be one data set. The node map will be another, maybe some sort of weighted relationship with OD pairs if I can get that working by the end of this year. The idea is to have it all in a single permanent rail engineering portal where people can switch layers on and off and kind of play with it, essentially, do screenshots of various layers overlaid. Kind of, that's the thing. If you're interested in getting involved in this, get on the Discord and message us. There is I'll start tagging people who've expressed interest. There's a role on the server I can tag you to if you've expressed interest, and you can join us in the chat relating to that. Yes, so Chris Bird says, there is always a thought that reopening old line is easier than new alignments. Right, that spending money to connect the large centre makes more economic sense. Yeah, the Ella, yeah, this is the code thing I think I nudged you about ages ago. I think it probably is. Chris, you're absolutely right. There is that idea, and frankly, it's often case is not correct. Because as we'll have a look at in a minute when we go back to the network map, back to Google Earth, those existing railway lines are very weavy and quite useless. Actually, it'd be quite good to make use of new alignments in several cases, and that would involve a lot less compulsory purchase, frankly. David Shepherd, please can we have a map of domestic air routes that can be killed by high-speed lines? Yes, all of the ones that don't connect to islands is the answer to that. You don't need a map. Just look up a map of all internal flights within the major landmass of GB. So, right, that's that. Will, I hope that you didn't mind me putting that up, but I think people generally get the feel for it. You can see where there are obvious big patches where there's great distance from a railway station, and for the most part, that's fine. But where you have a higher density of population, you can see that picks up. And and the idea is you could also use this data set to create a similar nodal map. And then you could weight those nodes based on, if you've got an area that is next to a railway line that doesn't have a station, you could, if you're a clever coder, you could get it to place the node for the station as close as it can to the centroid of the high density bit without, that's the strongest orange, but also while placed on an existing railway line. If you wanted to bias for where we're missing, so for example, a first pass, you could use this data to just decide where new stations on existing railway lines should be. Rather than thinking about new infrastructure, new alignments, new rights of way, new line of route, just where stations are missing on existing lines, you could use this data to create that. Another data set, let's go back to Mike Spencer's map that I've done before, that's saying broadly the same thing. Again, you can see the high density, this is postcodes versus distance to stations. Nice heat map here. Again, you can see gaps down here. Postcodes generally, you have more postcodes where more people live, so that's kind of why it's kind of a fairly useful but fairly broad brush approach to this. But it is based on road distance, so there's a usefulness here that I think Will and I need to work on to get the other data set to use distance via road to the station rather than line of sight. But it's a decent proxy, to be honest. But anyway, you can see there's gaps up the end of the Llŷn Peninsula, north of Anglesey and Cardigan particularly there, and then some interesting stuff elsewhere as well. Sort of big gaps. Where is that? What's that? Anyway, yeah. Yeah. So this is another. So the point is, there's lots of data to play with, lots and lots of data to play with. So, right. What's that? Yes, so, right. Anyway, let's continue with slides. So that's adapting and develop. Right, yeah, the point, that's kind of my quote that I've used before on the Woodhead route episode, which is that just because closing a railway was a bad idea doesn't mean reopening it is a good idea. And I think that goes for the Carmarthen line, frankly. Controversial perhaps, but that's my gut feeling, is that there are better places to invest those resources. I don't mean money. I don't care particularly about cash. I do care about time and about people, human resources. There's a chronic shortage of engineers. So next thing is thoughts. What are your thoughts, folks? So send through your thoughts while I go back to Google Earth. So let's have a look at, we've got both the existing and former lines up on here. So the faded lines are the lines that don't exist anymore, mostly. And we're going to have a look at what the north-south main line should look like. So I'm going to put up two layers of the network connectors, because you can see sort of, you can see the sort of connection here with, and actually if I click so if I click the north-south, if you just click the 50k to 100k connector, it kind of just whizzes straight through the border, so that's not that useful. But if I look at both the 10k to 50k and the 5k to 10k one, so the darker it gets, the smaller, the higher the resolution the network map is. So if we're going from Brecon northwards, well, there was a railway Brecon southwards that it's a bit of a dogleg, and I'd recommend just dodging that and going straight through. But there is some stuff you could use. I've cycled this actually. I've cycled pretty much all of this. I've cycled up here, and so I should have put some photos in actually, and cycled down here and then down all the way. In fact, there's a north-south cycle I did. I cycled all the way from Conwy, down to down this way, down along the coast. Where did I go from here? Yeah, I probably went inland. Is it over the Mouthach? Where do I've gone over from this way up the Mouthach trail actually, then Dolgellau. Anyway, you get the point. And then down here, and then to Aber, and then south this way to here, and then here. So I've broadly done a north-south thing. Anyway, so I've cycled on some of this. It's quite nice. Anyway, railway. You could do a railway. This is so north from Brecon to Bilth is fairly straightforward. You've got there are some challenges with the kind of the bit of the Brecon beacons that heads northwards. But you could get from Bilth down through to Brecon without too much pain, I don't think. A couple of tunnels. Bilth, so there's Bilth. There's Bilth Road with, that is Bilth Wells here, I presume. Up to, actually, is that right? Oh, yeah, obviously, yeah, so sorry, Bilth to then Llandrindod. And then that's very easy. Potentially you could use the existing Heart of Wales line and augment it. That might be a thing you'd do. That might be a sensible way to connect. So you'd have a connection from kind of Bilth Road down to Bilth Wells, and then you'd follow kind of perhaps cutting some of the corners ideally to have a faster alignment. I'm suggesting this should be a 160 mile an hour railway, by the way, if I was going to do it myself. So continuing up here, then you get to a bit that doesn't have any railway, which is the connection between Llandrindod and up to Newtown. And this is okay. There's some. So if let's go down here. Have I got 3D on? Yeah. So if we're following along here, yeah. Okay, it gets a bit hilly for this bit, but not too bad. That's quite hilly, and then obviously some quite nice. I'm ignoring all of the potential habitat. This is pretty habitat sensitive, this bit. That would be tricky, and I'd suggest just base tunneling it if you could. It's not really a base tunnel when everything's so low, but anyway, whiz along here. Then you get up to Newtown, and then you intersect the Cambrian line. This is interesting because I think at this point, well, in fact, definitely at this point, you follow the Cambrian line. So upgrades to the Cambrian line to get the line speed up there. Then up to Welsh Pool. Then from Welsh Pool, you divert off the Cambrian, and I would suggest going via, even though it's not on our map because it's in England. Go over into. Go over to Oswestry and connect Oswestry up to it. Come on, let's face it. Let's not get too nationalistic. The geography is easier. There's an existing line of route that you could exploit to an extent. I think that'd be more sensible. And then also whether you then continue through following Chirk and then round Ruabon and then up, kind of following that and augmenting that line. It'll be fun doing the line over the next to the aqueduct. Anyway, right. So that follow that up, and then at this point, then you kind of get into the dirge of, well, I don't know what the north-south line should do here to best connect through kind of Flintshire. Up to the North Wales main line, but basically you'd choose the most sensible way of doing that. It might be using the existing line, it might be, if you're going to do it quickly, you'd probably say, right, use the existing line. If you were going to do this for most rapid deployment of a Welsh north-south railway, you'd use the existing alignments as much as you could. So you'd have a new section between kind of up to kind of connecting south of Oswestry from Newtown. You'd have a new section connecting from Welsh Pool. You'd have a new section from Newtown to Bilth. To Llandrindod, and then you'd have a new section from Brecon up to Bilth. So those would be your new section to there, and then up, and then from that point you've got the connection and you can augment. That's kind of what I think that we're at 4:15. Not doing too bad, I don't think. That's what I think the north-south main line should be. I don't think it should be on the. I don't get me wrong. I do think that there's, for example, sense in connecting up Carnarvon that isn't at the moment. That would make sense to me. There are fairly sensible things that need to be done that you could to places that are small. Actually, that's a good point. What's the population of Carnarvon? Caernarfon population. What is it? Oh, it's 10,000. Why has Carnarvon not appeared? That's interesting, isn't it? Why is that? So that data set might not be perfect. That's interesting. Yeah, because it's 10,000 more, 9,000, 10,000. Oh, no, it is there. There's Carnarvon. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so it is connected in. Good. Oh, I was panicking there. That's fine. Will, your data set's grand. Ignore me. Why 160 miles an hour specifically? Is it the best balance between cost journey time? Yeah, it's kind of medium speed, so it's not like 225 to 250 mile an hour alignment like HS2 is. 160 is like decent sort of speed, so you get decent journey times, but it's not, the volume of, there's not such a need over the shorter distances. There's not such a need to undercut domestic flights. I mean, all domestic flights in Wales should be, within Wales should be absolutely grounded anyway. But the Gerallt and the kind of the train that goes from Holyhead through to Pembroke or through to Carmarthen or wherever it is, that train is so slow. It takes most of the day, which is a waste of time. So 160 miles an hour would afford, particularly. Okay, you might not have 100. Ideally 160 the whole lot from the major. So from our. Where are they? From these, you'd 160 mile an hour. The connections through to Cardiff. So yeah, you'd aim for 160. Actually, right the way up to Holyhead. Yeah, fair play. Not the whole way necessarily, but you'd aim to improve journey times as much as you could and reasonably, and you could do that incrementally. So if you built the new bits to a decent quality, then you could look at upgrades and bypasses and kind of realignments and diversions on where you've used the existing alignment. Anyway. So, there is that. Yeah, ban the vomit comet. Oh, so. Right. that is all. I don't know what the chat's gone off. If you want to at me in, Alex is saying, yeah, Alex Fortune. I'm so glad you've joined. I hope this is interesting. I wonder if it'd be good to have an offline chat about this if we could, because I know that there are things in the works, but from my perspective, that's where I think a north-south connection should be. It's exciting, but your winky tongue face means I hope maybe it's interesting. There's a balance to be struck for regional lines of 160. For example, when I did the Transpennine route, I did that as I designed it as 160, whereas I think potentially it's being designed as a higher speed than that by Transport for the North. Anyway, right, let's go back to the slides. Any other thoughts? So let me go through any atted. Remember to at me if you've got any kind of thoughts or queries or questions. At me into it so that Cardiff Holyhead is 6.5 hours. The Geracht does it in 4.5. Yeah, 4.5 hours. That on that journey. I mean, what is that journey? That's Holyhead to Cardiff, and if you drive it, no, to be fair, if you drive it, it's 4.5 hours as well. It's only because the roads are rubbish. See, for me, that's a good reason to enhance the rail, because if you enhance the rail service, currently it's as good to drive as it is to get the fastest train, of which there's only 2 a day. If you get the slower train, it's 2 hours longer. But if you improve the rail service so that it's, given that we're looking at, HS2 is enabling 3 hours, potentially if Transport for Scotland get their way, Transport Scotland get their way, sorry, you'll have 3 hours from London to the Scottish Central Belt. I don't think that 3 hours between Holyhead and Cardiff is too much to ask for, frankly. So anyway, that requires substantially less heavy infrastructure to achieve. That's that. That's my thoughts. Any other queries? Yeah, Alex, just message me and we'll Alfonso Lapulce, here's a thought: plug the north-south gaps with narrow gauge. Yes, there's lots of narrow gauge potential, but narrow gauge is not the future. Detour, having done that journey or Bristol Holyhead to connect to the ferry, it is so slow. No tea, coffee on the last train of the evening. Yeah, it's rubbish. Electrification. Oh yeah, obviously all of this should be electrified, other than maybe the extreme fringes. I would suggest anything that fits. Basically, my gut instinct would be that anything that fits onto the. Let's go back to Google Earth. I would suggest that anything that fits onto. Where is it? This? No. Certainly that would be electrified, but I think anything that fits onto this density of network connectivity should be electrified, and that includes to Aber. Actually, I think just stuff it, electrify that. Yeah, that's my gut feeling of long term. That would be where you'd electrify. Yeah, good question. House. Gareth Williams has won the bingo. Very nice. Alex saying really interesting stuff. Builds on lots of thinking in TFW. Would be worth a chat. My colleagues are working with us in the north. Oh yeah, nice. Lovely. Let's see what else. Cool. If you've got any other queries, I'll continue. I'll press ahead. But if you've got any other thoughts, do at me in. Matt Reed asks, what are the connections from North Wales to Liverpool and Manchester like? Not too bad, but yeah. So again, that's a very good point. You'd connect that North Wales node that we the kind of the high density stuff up here. You'd obviously connect that into Merseyside and have a decent connection. This shouldn't. I've developed and I've ignored the rest of I've ignored England to develop this map, but actually, as makes some sense. But actually, you should definitely bias towards the connections. You should definitely have really good connections up to Merseyside, across to the West Midlands, and over to Bristol as well. Obviously, I've only put so with this bit, I've only got the high density stuff going Swansea, Cardiff, Newport, but obviously that's Swansea, Cardiff, Newport, Bristol you'd have there. That's me logic. So, that's all that. Hopefully that's fairly interesting and insightful. Do at me into that. Any other thoughts? Should the Aberystwyth line be dual tracked? Yes. What else? You could put in longer dynamic loops and probably achieve most of it with much longer dynamic loops without full dueling, but a lot of it should be duelled, yeah. Intercity versus commuter versus regionals. Yeah, so that again. Oh, how long should the trains be? Well, that again depends on your weighting. So if we go back here, it depends not only on how many. Basically, it would depend on your OD weighting. So how many OD, how many origin destination, how many peeps are basically traveling along a given link, a given nodal interconnector, would determine what size of infrastructure that would be. Whether it's it would determine frequency of train, length of train. It would essentially determine how many passengers per hour per direction you have to achieve, and that would then define the infrastructure. So it's a bit of a back and forth iteration there, but you could essentially define. My logic is eventually you could, and I want to get to the point at the end of 2020. So the map drawing and the network design for me, I'm hoping to achieve by the end of 2022. So all this stuff going on here, Network 2050 stuff, which is as I'm headering it, I want to get a network map drawn by the end of 2022. I just want all the data sets to be overlaid in a portal by the end of 2021. Be realistic here. But my hope is that by 2022, you'd have a network map with stations and with passengers per hour per direction figures against each of the against each bit of infrastructure. That's my logic. Good question. What's stopping the Aberline being upgraded? Well, it kind of has been upgraded quite a bit, but it's it's expensive and people don't want to spend any money on things. Is Dovey Junction the most pointless station in Wales? No, because if you hop off, it allows you to get northwards without. Actually, everyone changes it max, so there's no point. No, it's not pointless because when I was doing little cycles northwards from Talabont, I'd get the train at Dovey Junction. So no, keep it open. Alistair Baldwin, congrats on building a transport model. Now make it run by tag rules. Yeah, this is the tricky bit. Is that this is why I say burn web tag? Is it because I want to ignore all the pretenses and previous biases and try and just think in an entirely purely available data driven way. And that's where Alistair laughs because he's saying, yeah, that's what tag is. It's just... Anyway, Alistair, let's chat more about that. Alistair from last week's episode, by the way. Absolute pleasure to have you on board, Alistair. So, yes, blah, 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 blah. Lots of apps. Right, let's continue. This is all like simple stuff for the dev gang, winky face Ellie. Yeah, okay, right. Let me progress. So, if that's your thoughts. My kind of key takeaway in all this is make data open. The more open data there is, the easier it is to develop stuff like this, and the easier it is. And I suppose it's not just make data open, but actually, if I go down, if I go here and pointer options and go in color and go white, and actually I want to go not just data, but also not just that, but also models. Make models open, which is kind of both of the things we're doing. So both things. Make data, make models open. So. Yes, right. Let's go. Let's continue. So let's get rid of my face. Audio people, thanks for listening. 2026 is the time. An hour and a half. It was always going to be a bit of a longer one. I'm sorry, but hopefully reasonably well compacted. Thanks for listening if you did so. I don't know how well that worked in audio-only form because that was very, very visual. But these always are. But particularly stuff when I'm drawing, it's probably a bit trickier. Anyway, yes. I can make that available as a KML, by the way, if you want it. People in the discourse, well, both the Discord. We can. I'll maybe make that the data set available as a KML. Actually, I should probably make the link of it, KML available to download in the description, shouldn't I? Anyway, right, moving on. So, Patreon advert. Patreon.com/Gareth Dennis. Please do consider supporting me in the Patreon. It allows me to, or via Patreon, it allows me to continue doing this stuff. It justifies my time. You can pick future guests and themes. I actually desperately need to do some guest emailing because I've got a string of solos because I need to email people to do guest episodes. If you have recommendations for guests, please do make them to me. And do so via anywhere you like, actually. But as a Patreon person, I have to listen to you more. You don't have to be a Patreon person to do it. To make those suggestions, but I record them and you have control and you can vote, particularly as a patron, you can vote on those themes and suggest them in a way that I definitely remember them if you are a Patreon supporter on the Discord. So yes, and then the Discord is where all this stuff happens. It's like the chat, but it continues dramatically. So GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord is where you can go to see all this chatter continuing. And if you just want to support me informally, then paypal.me/GarethDennis is the place to do it. Thanks. There be the ads. There be the adverts. Next week, we're doing the Tesco tunnel. We're looking at that time Gerrard's Cross Tesco fell on the railway. That's what's happening next week. Should be fun and interesting and a bit of sleuthing as to what on earth is going on for reasons. That should be an interesting one. I'm looking forward to it. Let me get my massive mug up. It's gone dark outside, have you noticed? And actually, my window's open, so people halfway down the street can hear me rail nattering very loudly, but never mind. That was a fun episode, actually. I enjoyed that. I very much enjoyed that. So, what can I say? There's lots of atting in there. Very good. On the KML, yes, I will make the KML available. Then I'll do it it'll be in the Discord definitely, and I'll try and remember to put it in the. I'll try and remember to put a link into the description of the video. It's been a pleasure, folks. Thanks for that. That was a bleachy face. That was like a BBC Doctor Who special effect. If I do this and then do, oh no, that was rubbish. Anyway, don't know what I'm on about. I'm tired and hungry. I need to go and have stir fry, or whatever I'm gonna cook. Anyway, that was fun. I'm gonna leave you all in peace and quiet. Thanks everyone. Hopefully that was interesting. I want to do that for the whole of GB and see what it throws up. I think it could be really interesting, but I need your help to do that because that I can't do that manually. That needs to be via people being clever and handy on the coding. So do that in the Discord. Anyway, I will see you all. Well, yeah, no, it's not a well. There's your problem. Yeah, well, there's your problem is that the thing collapsed. No, I'm going to try and explain it with diagrams. It will be a bit like that. Anyway, my hair is long and it needs shaving. I know. Right, I'm going to wave. Cheerio, everyone. You've been an absolute joy. Cheerio.